Hello everybody, this is Ghost Hunter 385 and I'm back bringing you more StarCraft II. So from here I would like to make a couple of corrections from the last video. To start off, when the Terran Confederacy fell, it was not replaced by the Confederacy, it was replaced by the Terran Dominion. So that is my bad. So from there, I also need to specify a couple of things that I did wrong, not wrong here, but glossed over. I glossed over on the Zerg missions because the majority of the Zerg missions were geared towards getting the Zerg to the Protoss homeworld, but I glossed over the fact that in one of the missions after Sarah Kerrigan emerged from the Zerg chrysalis, that she went to an old Confederate outpost which was left of the Terran Confederacy, and basically Sarah Kerrigan in her Zerg form took all the data so that way she could undo the damage. Well, I wouldn't say damage, whatever they did to alter her brain, and then she had more power. I glossed over that in the last video, and that's my mistake. I apologize for that. But for the most part, then there was the death of the Celebrate by the hands of the Dark Templar Prelate Zeratul. So, because Zeratul killed the Celebrate, because only the Dark Templar can kill the Celebrates. Why that is, in-game it was explained canonically that the energies that the Dark Templar used, the energy that the Dark Templar used, to best phrase it, are the same energies, so therefore the Zerg Overmind could not reincarnate the Zerg Celebrate. So I'm gonna cut that off from there because it's most of what my mistakes. So let's continue with Jim talking with his lead engineer.
Look, I know money's been tight.
Yeah, this is the problem with running a rebel outfit here. You expect to have money, but when you need it the most for troops, food, troops, supplies, etc., etc., you find yourself lacking because you don't have the financial backing. It's sad, but that's what happens when you're not a main governmental military body. I guess is the right way to phrase it. So this is what happens. You have to find a way to make money. Ooh, selections. The thing that always kills me about this is that in your first two missions, you get 100 credits. You get enough for, if you do it right, just enough upgrades for one or two upgrades. Always get that one. Heals faster, less energy use. I'll get the marine upgrades in the next video, so let's get that. Back to base, and let's get the better range for the bunker. Now that I could pick the other one anyway, so got it. Alright, moving on, back to the bridge, and let's move on to missions here, shall we?
Status, Matt? We picked up a distress call from the planet Agria.
So we got two missions to sit here from Agria and
Your convict buddy
Monolith.
Mission retrieving another
Not
artifact.
Monolith, Monolith. My
It's on
bad.
a Protoss shrine world called Monolith.
So let's go to Agria first here. Why do I do Agria first? Well, it's not that it pays more money, it's just that as you go through, it's just, which one's kind of the easier mission, and Agria is actually the easier mission here.
Incoming transmission.
Thank you so much for responding to our distress call.
Hey.
I'm Dr. Ariel Hansen, and I represent the people of the Agria colony.
Pleasure to meet you, Doc. You can call me Jim. What's the situation?
The Zerg have overwhelmed our planetary defenses. The colony is
Yeah,
lost.
very
For the past 12
bad
hours, we've been
situation to
evacuating
be
people to the
in.
nearest starport, but The Zerg attacks have become
Gotta
so
run
intense, we can't get any
faster.
more through.
Now this kind of
If you
reminds
can
me of
guard
the
the
scene
highway,
from
we can
Jurassic
start
Park.
sending
Must
the
run
remaining
faster,
groups every
must run
few minutes.
faster, must
Don't
run
worry,
faster.
Doc. We'll get your folks through to that
Because
starport
that's
safe and
basically
sound.
what it is. Must
I pray you're right,
run
Commander. The
faster
Zerg are
to
more terrible than I ever
live.
imagined.
Sad when you think about it, but you know, this is what happens when hostile aliens happen. In any case, let's get on to this video's topic. We are jumping back in for more StarCraft lore here. As I said in my earlier video, I'm saving this for the longer videos.
Ready to fry.
I got us some fire.
So after my corrections in the beginning of this video, I apologize for the length in advance. I'm doing my best to make shorter videos here,
Barbecue time.
but it's not always it's not always easy. What can I say?
Our allies.
But in any case, where we left off was that after Zeratul killed one of the Zerg celebrates, the Overmind gleaned the location of the Protoss homeworld of Ire. So after the Overmind gleaned it, Overmind is not a he, it is basically described as an it. It is intelligent, but as far as I know, it has no sex or gender. It just
Thank goodness
is
you're
the
here.
Zerg Overmind.
I'll give you control of the main building so you can help us evacuate the colony.
But in any case, after the Overmind gleaned the location of Ire, it set the Zerg to invade. They invaded, and then they took, I believe it was it's not a Cadian crystal. What were those crystals called? They had a lot of psionic power to it. They weren't called, what were they called? Cadian crystals? Something along those lines. I'm not gonna sit here and try and remember the whole thing or try and butcher it, but that's the best way to describe it. They were powerful psionic crystals that grow in the presence of psionic individuals. I guess that's the best way to phrase it. But after you mine that, as the Zerg Celebrate mines the crystal and you bring it back, that's when the Overmind implants itself on the crust of Ire and begins taking over Ire and spreading the Zerg creep all over Ire and everything. And from here, this is where you start off in the Protoss missions for StarCraft, for the first StarCraft game. Now, it actually doesn't tell you in the first game who you are, but in this game, it actually makes it very clear that you are Artanis in StarCraft 1. And I'm not talking about Brood War expansion here. No. I'm talking about in the first game, you are Artanis.
Well done.
And Artanis leads the defense of Ire.
Don't stop for anything.
Hey, this is a lot. I'm sorry, but it's just a lot, and I'm trying to remember the best I can. So just give me a moment for my brain to catch up with my mouth. So just give me a quick second here. But in any case, Artanis led some of the initial defenses against the Zerg, and this is when we were actually introduced to Praetor Phoenix, who is a Protoss hero who fights against the Zerg. Now, eventually, Artanis has to go deal with a situation in another what did they refer to them as? Districts?
Well done.
It's not the right word, but it's the best way to phrase it. Different area, province, area of land. And the Zerg launch a surprise attack, and they ultimately kill Praetor Phoenix. But don't worry, Phoenix will be back. Now, after Phoenix's death, Artanis is summoned by it's not the Twilight Council. What is the original Protoss government called? Oh wait, that's right, it's called the Conclave. The Conclave sends Artanis off-world, even though it's much to his protest, to go get Tassadar, because of Tassadar's quote-unquote failure to burn out the Zerg before they got to Ire, the Conclave decides in its infinite wisdom that Tassadar needs to be punished for his transgressions of abandoning battling the Zerg, and then from there also spare. I guess the best way to phrase it is to spare the Terrans. Is the best way to phrase it here. Again, my brain's moving too fast for my mouth, so I'm trying to do my best to keep my pacing here. I am sorry, I apologize. But in any case,
Yeah, whatever.
not Tassadar. Artanis is sent to find Tassadar, and eventually, by going to Char, Artanis does find Tassadar, but Tassadar is not alone. In his attempt in fleeing from Char, Tassadar ran into James Raynor, and together, Jim and Tassadar survived by combining what was left of their forces and working together to survive. And when this was found out, the Protoss of the Conclave were not happy when this information comes to light, and the fact that Jim calls them out on basically what amounts to their BS, that Tassadar did the right thing by sparing the Terrans. Knowingly Tassadar had gained an ally and would eventually also gain more allies for the Protoss in the fight against the Zerg. Raynor, they basically made an ally and friend out of James Raynor.
Please alert your men.
And, this is where Jim starts garnering a bit more respect for the Protoss, aside of thinking them aliens that were just out to burn down Terran worlds. It actually proved to him to a little bit that, these are definitely aliens, but they're not wholly against us. So, in a way, you could describe the situation as the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But later, it actually became out, it would later become, these aliens are my friend. Is what it would boil down to. So, from there, Tassadar convinces Artanis that to defeat the Zerg, they needed the help of the Dark Templar. And to do so, they needed to find the Dark Templar. So back on the surface of Char, the Dark Templar have hidden themselves away in some type of Terran bunker on either Char or a nearby world. But I do believe it was Char off the top of my head. But from there, you go into this bunker and you find that there are Zerg, but there's also a lot of Terrans who are like, "Oh, you guys are no Raynor? Sign us up. We're with you." And this group of Terrans and Protoss eventually find the Dark Templar hiding deep within this bunker. And after finding them, it comes down that the Dark Prelate Zeratul, who's been hiding, agrees to work with Tassadar again to slay the Zerg. And in doing so, invites the wrath of the Conclave. So when the Dark Templar show up on Ire with Tassadar, the Conclave is furious and then proceeds to attack the forces of Artanis, Tassadar, Jim Raynor, and the Dark Templar. And in the midst of the fighting, Tassadar refuses to allow his people to slaughter each other, and willfully surrenders himself
Well done.
to the Conclave's justice.
Upgrade
So from here,
complete.
this is where Artanis
Smells like
and Jim
victory.
and the newly discovered Praetor Phoenix, whose body was dragged and he was turned into a dragoon, and they went and freed Tassadar from... excuse me for a second here. They ended up freeing Tassadar from imprisonment, and then when Tassadar is free and there's this huge battle about to begin, the Dark Templar reappear and give the main leader of the Conclave, what was his name? And he was he was really big on Protoss I guess you could refer to them as the light side of the Protoss. He was in charge of the Conclave, basically. Well, not in charge of the Conclave, but he was one of the main people of the Conclave, is the best way to phrase it here. And when Zeratul points out to him that he's let the old hatreds get the better of him, in the fact that he's willingly killing his own
Commander,
people
another
just
convoy will be heading out
because
soon.
their old hatreds, instead of letting bygones be bygones and dealing with the larger threat. When it finally was, I guess when the adjudicator of the Conclave, I don't remember if that's what his title was exactly, but more or less when he realizes that Zeratul is right, this is when you start having Protoss start working together, both the Dark and the Light Protoss, although they're not exactly called the Light Protoss. That's the best way to describe it, but that's not exactly what they are in any case. But for simplicity's sake, it's just the best to find them as the Light Protoss. And from there, this is when the Jim, Tassadar, Zeratul, Artanis, and the Adjudicator of the Conclave come up with a plan. We need to kill the Zerg Overmind.
Upgrade complete.
Because if we don't kill the Zerg Overmind, it's just not going to end well at all. So the plan is, more or less, we need to find a way to attack the Overmind. So they come up with a plan. Unleash the fury of the Dark Templar. By killing two Zerg celebrants. They plan on this would distract the Overmind and disorientation of the Overmind, because of this. If a celebrant dies, either that Zerg brood has to be killed, or a way has to be brought control back over it. So with sudden death of two Zerg celebrants, and the confusion and the chaos that would cause the Zerg Overmind would make it vulnerable. And through a tough battle, Zeratul manages to slay both Zerg celebrants.
Sure thing.
And when they do that, this is when you go in for the kill against the Zerg Overmind. And at this time, this is when you see Raynor's Raiders, or what would you consider the beginning of Raynor's Raiders, going in with the Protoss led by Artanis and Tassadar on the battlefield, going in and laying a strategic strike against the Zerg Overmind. Through a hard-fought, bloody battle for both Terran, Protoss, and Zerg.
That's fine.
An extraordinary amount of loss of life on all sides here.
Yes, sir.
the Protoss and Rainer's Raiders manage to inflict enough damage on the Overmind to where the Overmind could be killed. And to do so, Tassadar channeled the power of the Dark Templar through the carrier ship that he was on. And by doing so, he crashes the ship into the Zerg Overmind.
We just detected Zerg organisms entering the upper atmosphere. I can't give you an exact fix, but they're heading your way.
When you wish those drop pods were actually reinforcements. Sorry about that. Just had to. It's like, when you want something to be yours, like, help has arrived, and it's like, nope, that's not what's coming down.
Of course.
But in any case, I digress. Back on the subject here.
Outstanding.
But anyway, sorry, excuse me. But back on the subject here.
Looking forward to it.
This is when Tassadar crashes his ship into the Zerg Overmind. And when he crashes the ship into the Zerg Overmind, he releases a tremendous amount of power of the Dark Templar energies. And in a grand show of energy explosion, energy release, however you want to phrase it, the Zerg Overmind is killed. In this grand show of, well, not grand show, but grand release of Dark Templar energy. And by doing so, Tassadar kills the Zerg Overmind. And it's like, hooray, the Zerg Overmind is dead. But now, this is where the first StarCraft game ends on this massive cliffhanger of what happens next. Now, from here, we move on to the expansion set, the Brood War. In the beginning of the Brood War, after the fall of Tassadar and the death of the Zerg Overmind, because they both died at the end of the first StarCraft game, you find that the survivors of the Protoss are trying. There's just no way. There's too much. The survivors of Ire, there's just nothing that they can do. There's too much Zerg. There's way too much Zerg on Ire. There's too many of them, and to add worse to worse, they're mostly feral Zerg. They are not being led by the hive mind of the Overmind. They are mindless, attacking every living thing that is not Zerg. So if it's not Zerg, it dies. Basically. So from there, it's decided that the surviving Protoss would flee to the Dark Templar homeworld of Shakuras. And they get the last remaining functional warp gates, plug in the coordinates given, coordinates, however you want to phrase that word, however you want to do that phrasing, punch in the coordinates, open a warp gate to the Dark Templar homeworld of Shakuras. And when they do that, they eventually end up evacuating most of the light Protoss to the Dark Templar homeworld. I almost said Zerg there. But when they open up the warp gates and move through, the Protoss are doing what they can to survive, and then they find that the Zerg have also come through the warp gates as well. And they are on and attacking Shakuras. And from there, this is all becoming one big problem. Because the Protoss fled to Shakuras to preserve their species, not be annihilated by the Zerg. So after making contact with the Dark Templar, and freeing themselves. Well, not freeing themselves, but getting aid from the Dark Templar. And there's a lot of tension because, again, the Conclave of the Light Protoss, well, you find this out more in StarCraft II than you do in StarCraft I, so I'm just going to spoil this right now. The main reason why the Light Protoss hated the Dark Templar was because the Dark Templar rejected the Kala, which is the psionic
Sir, I'm picking up
connection
seismic
between
disturbances
all the
closing in on your
Protoss.
position. I think it's some
And
kind of
the
tunneling,
Dark
sir.
Templar,
Wonderful.
after a certain point,
Just like
ritualistically sever what they refer to as a nerve cord
Got it.
that most of the Light Protoss have, and this cuts off
Yes, sir.
the connection of the Kala, and this was seen as blasphemous by the Light Protoss, by the Light Protoss Conclave anyway. And then this is where a civil war took place between the Protoss, where the Dark Templar fled. And eventually they ended up on Shakuris. And when they ended up on Shakuris, you know, the Dark Templar were not unified. They were actually fighting amongst themselves, basically, here. And
almost
by
there,
doing
Commander.
when this
Another
happened, they
convoy will
found
be
a
starting up
structure
soon.
on the surface of Shakuris, and it was actually a Zelnaga temple. And the Zelnaga temple brought calm to the fury of the Dark Templar. So from there, the Dark Templar started to rebuild. They started to act more like the advanced race that they were. So from there, you start going, first it's, we need to find what were these crystals called? The Ujamin? I'm pretty sure that's close, but I'm pretty sure it's incorrect. And the Kazahite crystal? Something along those lines. The crystals needed to be found to purge Shakuris of the Zerg. To do so. But before that happens,
Guess we'll find out.
Sarah Kerrigan shows up claiming to be freed from the Zerg influence because she was being controlled by the Zerg overmind. And that, more or less, she's now free. And she wants to help. Now, this is looked on with suspicion. And why wouldn't it be looked on with suspicion? This is an infested Terran who is about as dangerous as a fully matured Protoss executor. I mean, she duked it out with Tassadar, lived, but she also had chased off the Protoss as well. So from there, you know, there is a lot of wariness. But Sarah Kerrigan, or Kerrigan as James Raynor calls her,
Can't wait.
shows up bearing some pretty bad news.
Yes, sir.
The Celebrates, who remained functionally control of themselves and their broods, decided to merge, what was it, about 3 Celebrates together to create a new Zerg Overmind. And if this new Overmind was allowed to live and grow, well, you know, Tassadar's sacrifice wasn't exactly for nothing, but a new Overmind meant a new threat. A threat that was dangerous to both Terran and Protoss. So guess what? It needed to go. The Protoss agreed.
The Zerg have gotten through.
So both Artanis and Zeratul go out and searching for these dark and light crystals. They eventually find them and come back.
Looking forward to
But when they get back, they found
it. Got it.
that the Light Protoss had more or less rebelled against the standing plans, and the matriarch of the Dark Templar has them killed. But not before Aldaris, if that was his name, Adjudicator Aldaris. I'm kind of remembering things as I go on here. I apologize, but it comes. Just as he's about to blab that Matriarch Fulzun is slowly and subtly being controlled through psionic manipulation by Sarah Kerrigan. She, this is when Kerrigan shows up and kills him. And then this breaks the agreement between the Protoss and Sarah Kerrigan.
Lift off now.
And I will continue this in another long-form video, but this video is almost over. So we're going to put this on pause from here, and we're going to roll into get out of the video here in just a second. Back on the bridge, back on the bridge. Ah, yes.
Great job, sir.
Not necessarily new recruit, but new person to the ship. Always fun.
It's hard to believe I'm even here.
Great to have you, Doc.
Well, the brush with death does
Well,
cause
your
people
medical
to
facility's
have
fine.
certain reflections.
And your science expertise.
I mean, it
says
reminds me of the
nothing's
time I was
Perhaps
about
I could start
14
there.
or 15 and I
Ouch.
started choking on a cheese stick.
I guess you
I
might be
still
what you
remember
stood
that.
for, too.
It's not a pleasant
Welcome aboard, Doc.
experience. But I'm not going to go into that here. Sorry, I don't mean to be a downer here, but that did happen to me, and it really sucked. Ah, yes.
Guess you heard the news by now, Raynor. Looks like you're back in business.
That I am, Mr. Hill.
You gotta like it when you find out that there's guns for hire out there.
Guns for hire?
Because guns for hire are always useful, but problem with guns for hire, you gotta pay them that good old moolah. Credits, money, however you want to say it. But I must admit, I do agree with Hill. I do love a good Mai Tai. What can I say? I'm a sucker for good rum. But in any case, everybody, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button, bang the bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.